right, shalom, shalom. This has been Burton with Ladder of Jacob. Today I have a very exciting guest. I'm very honored, honestly, to have him here. This is somebody I've known since 1999, around there, that I think is one of the most important people. He's probably going to be embarrassed I say this. One of the most important people in my life, and especially in my development, as I've grown from, somebody who was a brand new believer when I was 18 years old to understanding really quick that the Jewish people in Judaism and the Torah are very are the essential thing in understanding the Bible. So I'm just going to welcome my teacher, Tovia Behanu, to the show.
At last.
So shalom, shalom, Tovia.
Shalom, Ben. And yeah, you forgot to mention you were 19 years old back then.
Yeah,
Thank you for making me feel my age.
that's right. So I was 19 years old in 99, and we were on these.
Yeah.
It was weird because there was no Facebook. There was no. There was like prototypes of Facebook. I think back in the day, you were even on like BBSs and stuff, which that was like. I don't know what that BBS was, the bulletin board system or something, but you've been at this for a really long time. And I remember discussing Torah concepts in some type of a group. It was like based in email, but for a very early on in my walk, I mean, you always had this like understanding of really like an Orthodox Jewish perspective from Chazal, from the rabbis. And that was something that was just really remarkable and stunning. And like, how long have you been in this? Like, when did you start? Because I think you said in private conversation we've talked before, but you've been like in the online Torah discussion game for a while. So, and I don't mean to make you sound old by by mentioning this, but I mean the facts are the facts. I mean, back in the 90s even. So, how long have you been in this?
It goes back to, well, definitely 1990 was when AOL started, and America Online, for those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym. So AOL launched in 90, and that was a great experience because right from the get-go, well, I had seen, you mentioned bulletin board systems, I had seen a gentleman using something like that for his church, I think. I thought, well, that's interesting. They were talking on these electronic systems. So AOL came along, and yeah, we had quite a community. We grew there. I would probably define it more than as like a Jewish-Christian dialogue and, working on things together. We had like 40, 50 people working on this magazine. We had articles, we had, studies, we had a music column, a cooking column. We had everything in there, a prayer list, everything. It was quite remarkable. We did it once a month for 4 years, and that was quite interesting. And so AOL was like 1990 to 2000 or so, primarily. And then in the midst of that, in 95, the web really caught on, the World Wide Web, as we called it. And so my first website, Yashanet, first spiritually oriented website, I'd done some business ones before that, but the first spiritual website, Yashanet, started in November of 1995.
So I want to bring that up really quick.
Yeah.
I was able to go to the Wayback Machine, and people that have been in the Messianic world or in the Torah world or in the, whether they're Christians researching, Jewish roots, this website Yashanet was huge. This is so big, and so this is Yashanet from this is, I think, back in 2009 here, but it goes back even further. Like I can get a capture of it back to, I want to say like 2003. And you had a study on here. I don't know if this is going to pull up, but you had a study on the book of Matthew, on Romans, and on Revelation that was groundbreaking. And I don't know if a lot of people really realize how groundbreaking this was. And it went out to, here it is, actually, it pulled up here. So you would see that it says there was an introductory level, which was Matthew. By the way, this was not introductory. The citations of the Zohar and other things, but you were pointing out parallels in the Gemara and different things, and then our intermediate level study of Romans, and then an advanced level study of the Book of Revelation, which, by the way, I think 20 years later, you're still developing the Book of Revelation. And in last year, I believe it was, I did a study verse by verse on the Book of Revelation from the perspective of Chazal, and I would go to your notes prior to this, and I would read, and I was just like stunned on some of the insights that you've had, especially like the seven churches of, I don't like to say the word churches, the seven congregations of Asia, the letters parallel the seven types of Pharisees, and these type of interesting,
Yeah.
Insights.
Yeah, the original study, I remember wondering what books to tackle. I wanted to tackle New Testament books. And funny thing is, there was one that we never got to, and then there was a fifth one that wasn't a New Testament book. And when I say wasn't, I was literally like praying a lot about, well, which ones? And, things kind of pop in your head that make sense. And so to make a long story short, yeah, this has evolved. Yashanet is archived for now, but it's evolved more or less into some of it into the 13 Petals site, a little of it, and growing, because we all grow, we all change. So I've adapted and things like that. So the only one that's carrying over to 13 Petals is the Revelation study, because I've redone that a couple times, or added, what do you call it, edited it. But this new version I'm working on now in 13 Petals is going to be very different than, it's going to have a lot of the same material, but it's going to add a lot of more expansive stuff. So verse by verse, we're going to branch out into a lot of like related concepts to bring a lot of other things together into it that you might not expect in a Revelation study. So we'll be looking at doing that. Matthew on 13 Petals. I have a friend who lives over in Spain who did a Matthew study that I thought was just absolutely incredible. Zeus Chazal. He's put it in book form too. If anyone can afford to buy the book, it helps support him. He doesn't make much money at all, I can tell you that. But that's just crazy good, what he did with that. Romans, rather than redo it, I kind of prefer to just defer people to like Mark Nanos or someone like that, his Mystery of Romans book, because you really can't beat that, So I had fun doing, I borrowed some things from him, of course, and other people, and my own ideas, but I just kind of decided to leave that like that and focus on other things and just on Revelation. We didn't get to the Book of Hebrews study, which I'd like to do one day. That was the fourth one. But right now I'm kind of skipping to the fifth one, which was not the New Testament, which I just felt was important to do, which is Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim. So that project has started as well. That's not on the 13 Petals site. That's on the site that's behind me. I don't know if you can see what's...
Oh, déjà vu.
It is related to the Matrix movies, which are just a complete, I call them a midrashic vehicle to explain very deep spiritual concepts, and people wonder how that can be, and how do a Hollywood movie, how does that convey deep spiritual ideas? I would like to say, if God can have a donkey talk and reveal things, he can have anyone talk, right? Me included. But yeah, it's a great exposition of things, these movies. So we're looking to show these concepts through the movie to make it easy for anyone to understand, and then kind of turn it around and bring it back into real life. That's why it's called Matrix for humans, like for all of us. So those are the three studies. I mean, the fourth one with Song of Songs is on the kind of hidden on the Matrix site for now. But I can give you the link for that too to share. So yeah, we went from AOL to Pal Talk, and of course Yashanet to Pal Talk, and then these websites, and of course Zoom rooms. So it's just been an evolving thing regarding what technology we're using to do things like this. Get a lot of help from people like you, which is helpful because I'm not a techie. I'm a low tech, the famous Chinese philosopher of low tech.
You say that you're low tech, but one thing it's really interesting is it's really, to tell you the truth, you've always been on the cutting edge of communication, and I think you did that professionally in your business life, but I think also whether it was these old Pal Talk all the way up to modern Zoom rooms and everything that's going on, is that you've always been at the forefront to the point that you have shared books with several of our colleagues and others, and then we all got a hold of the book and our minds were blown and our entire paradigms were like shifted. For one was the Mashiach book by the Breslovers, that the Breslov Research Institute Mashiach book.
Oh, Kramer.
By Rabbi
Kramer.
Kramer, indeed.
Yeah.
And, your insight and also just your historical experience in this space, talking with both Jews and Christians, and you live in that world where you're interfacing with these two sides that in many ways sometimes say the same thing but speak two different languages, or there are also times where the non-Jewish world doesn't have the tools to really understand what the Jewish background is because of the necessity of the oral Torah. I think one of my biggest lessons that I learned from you is my opinion means Zippo. This is one of the greatest lessons of all time, is can you find the source in Chazal? Can you find the source in Judaism? Or are we freestyling it, making up our own rules as we go? And I think when I was a young guy, I didn't know it. I'm still growing. Every day I'm still growing even. But with that said, sometimes we think that our opinion matters when we really don't understand that's not the way the Torah works. It's like we can have our different hashkafot, our different, worldviews on different things. But if we have an opinion, we must find a Torah source that is based in a proper and legitimate interpretation. And the way we can really discover that is through the oral Torah, which a lot of people, especially in the non-Jewish world, don't really have a grasp of and how the mechanics of that work. So I really appreciate you for teaching me that once you understand your opinion doesn't really matter, then you're able to really learn.
You learn some of these things, and it literally opens a door you didn't even know was there into learning the next level of stuff that you could have never understood had you not. So it's a very humbling thing to know that it's almost like there's a trap at every level. You learn something, and your ego tells you, "Now I got it." Boy, I'm
Yes.
so smart now.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I can teach the world, right? And then you read something else later on and say, "Oh. No, that was only the level I was allowed to, I will say allowed to. God, and that is kind of true. God gives you what you're capable of understanding where you're at, but don't ever think that that's the end. It's just another little tiny step. It's like if you have a grain of sand and I have two, and we're talking about all the beaches in the world, what's the big deal, right?
Right.
So
Right.
really, it's that. So yeah, it's always important in terms of like you said, keeping your ego in check and constantly challenging yourself. So this is going to be like the fourth revelation. Well, there was the original, and I did two updates about 8 or 10 years apart, and this will be the fourth time I go through that study and amend it. Only this time it's much more significant. The interesting thing is, in parallel, I'm doing that Shir Shirim, Song of Songs study, and it just kind of hit me one day as I'm working on these two things. It's like I'm working on the same project for both. They are telling the same story in different ways. They're telling the story of exile, the corrections needed to get out of the exile, all those kind of things. The bride and the groom reference, everything. It's the same story. And so I'm still thinking how I'm going to continue to connect these things throughout. It's just absolutely things I would have never even thought of years ago. And
Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, is the rabbis call it the Holy of Holies of the Bible. And so it's amazing because I've seen your first iteration and your second iteration, at least, of your Revelation study. And I would say this is probably one of the most advanced level studies I've ever seen because it's highly based in Zoharic understanding. It's like super high level. And people will need, I guess one challenge is, and I would like to ask you, how do you navigate this? People need a ton of tools to be even able to access the level of studies you're doing. So, this is part of this base, introductory, intermediate, and finally advanced. When we're talking about the Sfirot, we're talking about, the Kala, the Shekhinah, the Ima Tata'ah, the lower mother, and the Ila Ima'ah or Ila'ah, the upper mother. All these different concepts, which are in the New Testament, how do we even bridge that gap to somebody that is coming from a completely Gentile world. Like, you have to sit down and just empty yourself. This is what I learned, when I met you, is like, because I came from the background of, okay, I'm reading scholarly books, I'm reading the Ivory Tower scholarly, and that's why I thought I knew something. And then I realized these guys in the Ivory Towers, they know Zippo. If they don't have a rabbinic paradigm to work with, whether it's Pardes or the concept of Maaseh Avot Siman Lebanim or Dibra Torah Kilashon B'nai Adam, all these different understandings, they're not even on the right starting point. And I think that's where you're like, you would sit back and ask questions, and it was one of the greatest teaching methodologies I've ever seen, because I've always heard that a rabbi answers questions, but a rebbe asks questions. And man,
there you go.
Yeah.
If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. That's what I like to say. But yeah, like you said something earlier, all these different like Zohar and concepts in the Revelation study to date or other things, it's like they're there, but what I'm trying to do with this one is interconnect things in a way that haven't been so far. And I think by interconnecting these things and with other concepts, maybe more familiar concepts, more down-to-earth concepts, that's why this is going to take probably a while to do, that it will help people to understand. Because one thing to quote a Zohar verse, but if somebody has much experience with that, what are they going to do with that? It's just going to be odd, to say the least. But if you can tie that in with other things that they're more familiar with and show, oh, this thing you're more familiar with, look how it resembles this or reacts to this, they'll see it a little differently and start to put things together. And it's a process, because like my first attempt to understanding, like I got this Zohar on a CD-ROM originally. Well,
I had that same Zohar, and I have such a...
and the whole thing's not on there too, but I learned one thing, and someone, a rabbi told me this too, it's like, it's one of these complex things where you can't understand the individual concepts unless you understand the big picture, but you can't understand the big picture unless you understand the individual. So it's like, what do you do? And I guess the only answer is work at it a lot and pray a lot. And
yes,
hopefully if you're on the right path, Hashem will help you.
Right.
As I know, like when I did the Revelation the first time, I would literally sit there every night. I'd be like, okay, like chapter 5. I'd sit at my computer and stare at it and go, I have no idea what I'm going to do here. And I would just like start, you start and just find a verse, go look on the CD-ROM for something that connects to it. Oh, okay. And then find something else, connect those two things, and so on and so on.
It's remarkable, because I remember your early Zohar, and I was just really stunned. I had that same Zohar. I have a special place in my heart, because I was like one of the first. And you know who
it's
also had that?
Because you can find things quick with the search feature.
It was incredible. Helpful. You would search it, and it would pull up every reference.
Yeah.
And I went through.
So now I use it I use it in conjunction with, like, I get the one by Daniel Matt, the Zohar by Daniel Matt.
That one, I would love to be able to search digitally as well. And
so I look for things with the digital Sunsino, and then I go find it in the other one, and it's a lot more detail and commentary and connections and all of that. So it's still a helpful tool.
Oh, super helpful. Well, speaking of that, bringing these deeper concepts and how it applies to this world, we're going to talk about 3 things. And so maybe this will be a 3-part interview, but just looking at this, the world we're in and the financial system that we're experiencing today, AI, Agenda 2030, the spiritual dimensions of these things, and then also, where is this leading us? Where are we going? I think this is a topic that you're researching probably deeper than most people, and it's something that I've looked at certain trends, where are we right now? Where have we been? And you can map out kind of almost like a trend line where we're going. And there's some good there, there's some bad, and there's some ugly. So we need to talk about that.
Everything,
and how does that also play into what's happening with Israel today? And then our own personal spirituality, our relationship with Hashem, our relationship with others, the concept of our own, nullifying our own ego, all of these different challenges that we're facing in this last generation, the Gvata de Mashiach, the footsteps of the Messiah. what can we do in all of these things that seems to be just like looking at the book of Revelation to see what chapter we're in today, or how do we navigate that, and how do we elevate during during this time? So,
Well, you mentioned this idea of like doing it in three parts, which yeah, it really is a three-part thing. And I would say the first part is probably 80-20 physical information, like things in the world, and 20% spiritual. We'll introduce some things, and I got a couple of, the usual crazy things to share. The second part about Israel is going to be very different for people. Some of it might even be a little, what's the word? Unsettling. I call it Israel, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there's a lot of stuff in the literature about certain aspects of Israel that are good and bad, etc., as is the history. But anyhow, we're going to talk about that, and that will have some connections to the first part, and that's going to be more 50-50 between, I like to say, physical and spiritual. And then when we get into the third part, which will be like, well, what should we be doing right now? What are the things we need to be focusing on that aren't the same old thing? Because when you have a new situation, there's new spiritual windows that open. Hashem's pouring a 55-gallon drum out of insight and revelation and stuff, as he promises in the scriptures. And if we're all holding little teacups and he's pouring 55 gallons, it's not going to work well for us. So we need to, the expression is expand the vessel to understand how we get there. And yeah, the whole idea you mentioned earlier, Shara Sharim, for example, there's a teaching regarding it that the deeper understanding of it won't be revealed till the last generation. Same as you see in Daniel chapter 12, right? Keep this hidden till the end. And those correlate very closely, the concepts there. So there's a lot of things, and I'm not saying I have the great revelation. I'm just saying that, as we get closer to that point, more and more things will be accessible, both because Hashem's making it happen, but also just, God bless the internet. I mean, there's so much Torah material available to people right now. More has been produced in our generation than all previous generations combined ever. It's amazing what's out there. Some of it's easy to find, some of it's not as easy, because you just don't know where to look. It's not like it shows up on Google at the top of the list. And there's other things that still aren't on the internet, which, if you have good connections with certain groups, that's very, very helpful in and of itself. So yeah, the whole bit with the digital financial system, there's some amazing parallels we'll get to later in the conversation. But the way I approach it is kind of like Jacob, when Jacob was told that Esau was coming with his 400 men.
right.
Which ironically, I just thought of this actually earlier today as I was looking at, getting ready for this, of like 400 is the top, it's the last letter. So, and it's also the mark, right? It's, the mark of God and another mark.
The word tav,
and
sure.
so Esau is coming with the end, right? With the tav, with the end, the 400. Wow. And yeah, I hadn't thought of that till today. And it's like this, what's going on in the world today, it's like, it's the same thing. There's something coming. And what did Jacob do? He did two things. He did the practical matters of, aligning things for his families and all that, and he prayed. He did both. So learning about what's happening and what, we might be able to do to, navigate the course, so to speak, and for our families and ourselves and all that on one level.
So that's really interesting. That's really interesting, because this concept of the 400 coming at the end, because obviously Esav in certain interpretations is essentially the prototype or the antichrist of his generation, if you want to say it that way. And then the gematria 400 equals, ayin hara, which is greed. And then it also equals
there you go.
yeah. So there's a ton of elements here that at the end times, how do we prepare? And then Jacob prepares in I think three ways. He first prays, second he prepares for war, and third he prepares how do I say that, for conciliation with his brother. But all three of these ways could provide a template for us based on Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim, the actions of the father serve as a portent for the children, on how we are supposed to prepare for these last days when you see this ultimate conflict coming between Esau, between Ishmael, between Yaakov, How does crypto, how does AI, how does blockchain, how do all these things that we're seeing developing so fast, let's say somebody doesn't understand crypto, blockchain, doesn't understand any of these things, maybe we could just go through some basic, like, okay,
Sure.
definitions.
Yeah.
What is this? Just to lay the groundwork quickly, so we can kind of use that as a launch pad to go into the deeper
Right.
prophetic meaning and also personal meaning, because everything that we're seeing right now, things are developing so fast with AI that a lot of people are like, okay, all my 80s movies that I grew up with are becoming true. Maybe you can give us some basic, definitions for us to start and see.
Sure. Well, vocabulary. I mean, if you're studying even spiritual texts, so like Kabbalistic text, that's got its own what's lexicon, whatever you call it, right?
Right.
The words that are used there that, you get lost real quick. So you have to have some basic idea of what the terminologies mean before
Sure.
you even start discussing what they're really all about. But yeah, it's interesting though. One other thing that caught me, I saw an interview yesterday with the CEO of NVIDIA, which is now like the biggest company in the world, right? They
Mm-hmm.
do the GPU computer stuff and all of that. Well, the interview with him, he was asked the question, "Who do you think the smartest person in the world is now?" The interviewer. It was just 2 days ago. And he said, "Well, I don't want to say who that is or even, what does smart mean?" And he said to me, he said, "Smart is a combination of someone who understands how to really understand data, like all the data and facts that are out there, and he said has a sense of the vibe," he called it. And when I was back in the day in university, I didn't know whether I wanted to go down psychology or mathematics, particularly statistics. So when he said that, it really hit home with me because I'm like, this is what it's about: psychology and human nature. And when you get into what the Torah says about that, and Kabbalah and Sephiroth and all that stuff, and then statistical data, I mean, they really correlate closely together. So the quote he gave to summarize his thoughts was that the smartest people in the world right now are the ones who can see around corners. And I'm like, yeah, bingo, that's it exactly. To be able to see what's coming based on those two things, to understand the actual data that's out there and actually understand human nature. And I thought that's just such a brilliant quote, and it kind of frames a little bit about how I think about things like this. And my first experience looking at this came back in 1988. I started picking up some articles. I said 88, Ben, again, referencing your age. So I was looking into the IMF was in the news, International Monetary Fund, and what they were doing, they were working with early ideas called ISDN, Integrated Systems of Digitized Networks. And it was like, I'm not saying it's a precursor to this blockchain and stuff we have today, but the idea was there to unify all these systems like that. So that goes way back. And then some of the United Nations program stuff, which we'll just talk a little bit on later. That was the same language then. And I've got some of my documents. In fact, I'll have a graphic to share later with the audience. Some of the language that they were using then in 88, back then, is the same language that's at the heart of the UN Agenda 2030, which is sustainable development, is what it's all about.
Like, that sounds like something I should support, but when you get into the details of it,
Well,
it's like, I don't know if this is a good idea.
we'll get to it, and it's very messianic in nature. That's the thing. This stuff really is. When you look at their SDGs, the sustainable development goals, they really are. They sound like the messianic kingdom. It's interesting to see that, to say the least. But yeah, regarding so I go back to 1988, doing some research and published that document in first documents in 1990. So I've still got those in a binder, printed on my original early Mac computer on a dot matrix printer. I've saved them to this day, which is kind of some things have changed, but the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So that started back then. So yeah, in terms of just some of the basic stuff, so this whole digital finance thing is centered around what's called crypto or cryptocurrencies, and most people think Bitcoin right away
Hmm.
because Bitcoin started about 17 years ago or something like that, and it was the earliest, the only thing. Took a long time to develop, but it got the market share early, and even today, when you talk about the entirety of how much money is in the crypto world, the market share, as they call it, Bitcoin. 50 to 60% of the entire crypto market is Bitcoin. It's the Bitcoin. It's I don't know what the price is today, 80,000. It's been over 100,000 per Bitcoin. And you don't have to buy a Bitcoin. You can buy, we'll talk about that later. You can buy little pieces of anything with this system. And then all the other cryptocurrencies are called alternate or altcoins. So if you hear altcoins, that's what it means. So you have Bitcoin's the big daddy, and then all the others, which range from fairly sizable to, worthless. There's literally millions of coins out there, which 95% are junk, because you and I could create a token, a crypto token tonight. You can go, there's software to do that. You can get it online. I could name it after my dog, any of that. Yeah. And have my friends buy it, whatever. So anybody could create a crypto, and obviously right away, you might think scams. Absolutely. That's how people get scammed. They try to make a quick $1,000,000. They think they're going to do that, like buying a lottery ticket or something, and it doesn't work out that way. But if the legitimate stuff is okay, but you got to be careful for that. And all of these cryptos exist on what's called blockchains, or the blockchain, which is really a series of blockchains, which is kind of like a ledger, a digital ledger. So a computerized ledger, which is transparent to everyone. So you might have crypto in what's called a wallet, a digital wallet, or it's still on the crypto exchange where you actually buy it and sell it, like Coinbase or something like that. But everything's digitized, so your wallet number, like your checking account number, so more or less is out there, but it's not connected to like Ben Burton or to me. It's just a number out there. So everything is there. It's all transparent. Every transaction's transparent, and that's part of the good and the bad part of the system. We can talk about more later. So that's the blockchain. It's like a big notebook that everyone can see. Exchange. The idea of an exchange is where you actually buy, sell, trade your crypto, like Coinbase or Kraken. I'm trying to think of the ones that do commercials now. Crypto.com is another one. There's a whole bunch of these, and they're just places where you take some of your money from your bank account, you put it in a little place on the exchange, literally like in a stable coin, and we'll get to that later too. But you can just let it sit there for a while, and when you want to buy something, you use it to buy it. So you don't have to go like draw it out of your bank account and accidentally take the wrong amount. You can just transfer a little bit at a time and hold it there. So that's how that works. And then, like I said, there's digital wallets, which are, some of them are online, which are pretty safe. And then you can have a cold storage wallet, which is an actual physical device that you can transfer crypto into. It's not actually in the thing, it's on the blockchain, but your access to it comes by way of this physical device. And that's the safest, because there's no way, it's not connected to the internet, except when you go to make a transaction, and then there's all this security. So it's very, very safe. One of the big terms that's coming out of late that you're going to hear in the news if you start watching, and there's going to be a lot more newscast about crypto probably this summer and fall, because it's going to be in the news in a big way. In fact, just today, yay, of all things, today there was a big meeting in Washington, D.C., where President Trump called in all the crypto leaders, all the big banks, because they're fighting each other. The banks don't like crypto so much. And he called them all together to work on what's called the Clarity Act, or the Market Structure Bill, it's also called. And once that gets passed, it'll give a legal framework for all the banks and financial institutions in the U.S. to do things. They really can't move forward until they know legally what they can do and what's safe for their investors and all of that stuff. So once that passes and they stop haggling, then once the United States is all set, the rest of the world's ready to follow. So they're all waiting for, the whole planet's waiting for the U.S. to get its act together. We're actually a little bit behind some other countries, which is kind of weird, but it is. But one of the things you're going to hear about is something called tokenization, which is literally taking anything you can buy, well, maybe not candy bars for now, but anything you can buy, and representing it on the blockchain with a token. So the first thing they're starting with are like financial products, like stock securities. You can buy stocks on a crypto exchange, and you can now buy crypto on a stock exchange now. You can, which is, if you don't want to get, like if you're a person that has stocks and you deal with one of those groups like Charles Schwab or Fidelity or one of those, you don't want to learn all the crypto stuff. They're making crypto available in portfolios. In fact, they're actually recommending now a small amount of your portfolio if you're an investor type person. I don't have that kind of money. I'm trying to just pay bills every week. But if you do that, they're actually recommending a small amount to do that, which is interesting, because not long ago, this crypto was considered like junk or a scam or all this stuff. In fact, as recently as within the last year, and this speaks to another subject, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase Bank, was on television last spring. Yeah, it was last spring. So within a year, just poo-pooing on crypto, like, right? Just da-da-da, talking negatively about how it's garbage. And at the same time, that JP Morgan Chase CEO is saying that, they were sponsoring a crypto event overseas, which is a lesson there to don't believe what the media is telling you, because it's all organized, it's all controlled. If they say up, it's going down. If they say down, it's going up. It's the manipulation, because a lot of the money that these big institutions and very rich people make, it's buyers and sellers. So if they can manipulate that and get you to, sell when you think it's going to go down, but it goes up, it happens. I mean, there's an example last October, not crypto, but gold. Gold went through the roof, all over the news. Gold is the greatest thing. It's reached new highs, right? It reached a new all-time high price. Everybody and their brother went out and started buying gold. There was videos I watched of people all around the world, every continent, in line at the local place where they buy their gold, and everybody bought gold like mad because it was doing so great. And in 48 hours, everybody lost 8% of their money back down, because the people who were in it early just started pulling it out and crashed the price. And this is even more drastic in the crypto world.
So let me ask you a
yeah,
quick question on that. So like, just from my understanding, this is one reason why people, certain people in Congress have like a track record that beats Warren Buffett in stock trading. So what you're saying is, if they say it's going up, prepare for it to go down, almost, because what they're doing, they've already bought and they want it to increase, and then they sell it. You always want to buy low, sell high. And so you can, and the news media, we know this from the video that's like, this is a threat to our democracy, and everybody's just repeating the same mantra over and over again.
Yeah.
So these pre-typed bullet points that every single news media is reading, that really is really influences people's minds and decision and buying decisions. Sure. So they go and somebody invests a lot, and now everybody starts buying it. The word's hot, the thing goes up, you sell it high, and next thing you know, the whole thing collapses while I put a ton of money in my pocket.
Well, yeah, there's large players that go in early, and they add more money in, and the price, the more they add in, the price starts going up. Looks, hey, this is starting to catch on. So it was $10 and it went up to 12. It goes to 14. People see this in the news. They, this is the way to go. Look at this thing moving, right? So some people come in and buy at 14 and 16, goes up, and so on. And more and more people come in buying it higher and higher. And then what's called a rug pull. The original big investor pulls their huge chunk out, and the price just crashes down. And so as it's starting to crash, the opposite effect happens. People start selling because now it's going lower and lower. Look how low it is. I better sell. They sell at a loss. The price is down low, and all that money they made by doing their rug pull, they now reinvest there. They go right back and reinvest in the coin and start the whole process over again. This happens a lot. So you got to have a cool head. You got to do your research, your homework, and be aware of how the system works, and invest not only in the right things, but the right timing too, and not only, buy low, sell high, but there's also different times of the year that certain things might, or just in the way it's all playing out, like this, like AI. AI is a pretty hot sector right now, or the real world assets with the tokenization I was talking about. And that goes back to like some of the definitions, like you will literally be able to buy, it's called fractionalized ownership. So the Empire State Building might be tokenized, and you think, hey, that's going to go up in value one day. You might have reason to think that. So I'm going to buy myself, 0.0001% of the Empire State Building, and you'll be able to do that. Or at a more practical level, you, like, homes will be tokenized. So let's say you're going to sell your house one day. All the things involved with selling a house, all the people that you have to deal with, the bankers and the title company, escrow agents, all these type of people, all the contractual stuff, all the time it takes, all the fees they all charge, all that's going to be put into the token in terms of what's called a smart contract. This is a little like electronic contracts with all that information already locked and sealed in there. So once we have an agreement, I'll literally be able to buy your house, Ben, with a token. purchase. I mean,
Okay,
it's going to be
so
that. It's going to go to that, you know.
well, okay,
I'm
so
simplifying it, but that's
yeah,
essentially
but
where
the
it's
way you
headed.
map this out does seem to follow all the trends that are happening. So right now, we can't really buy a candy bar with Bit. Maybe you can, but not that I know of. It's not common to buy a candy bar with Bitcoin, but that's where we're going to the point that everything is going to be blockchain based. So, what does that mean where we are timing wise, and then the key developments? Like, so where my mind is going immediately, and I'm probably going to jump way ahead by asking this question: if everyone slowly adopts, the blockchain, whether it's Bitcoin or some, other thing, or Bitcoin becomes something that's the official currency of whatever, that now we don't have to worry about currency exchanges, all the stuff that's specific to national, all that's bypassed. And then I remember this guy that he had, I don't know whether it was 200 million or 2 billion or something in Bitcoin, and he was so afraid of losing it, he put it on a flash drive. So he put his password on a flash drive and then encrypted the flash drive, and then couldn't remember the password to the flash drive, and now is completely locked out of like $2 billion. But what
Yeah.
if there was some type of digital ID or some type of, subdermal implant that would allow you to have instant access, that would verify you are you to access these funds? And then everybody jumps on this plane, this train going towards this ultimate blockchain financial control system. To me, that sounds a little, I don't know, how do I say, sounds like prophecy to me. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and yeah, I want to tie that into some other things that I want to bring up. You did mention about buying like a candy bar or something like that. Another aspect of this, similar to what I said before, but it's like I guess you call it decimalization. That's a big word, where you can use a tiny, tiny amount of what calling micropayments. They're calling that. So this is going to be used in some pretty cool ways. For instance, right now, if someone goes to work, they clock in the building or the time clock, right, on Monday morning, say 8 o'clock, right? They work 40-hour work week, payroll gets processed next Thursday after they get paid. So what's that, 10 days or so from Monday to Thursday. And with yeah, the dog's barking, yeah. With the micropayments, we'll be able to, as you clock in, money will actually start flowing into your checking account the moment when you clock in, like in little tiny bits. You'll literally be able to hold your phone, watch the checking account go up a tiny bit at a time. Pardon the dogs barking in the background.
No, that's
But yeah,
fascinating.
that's
It's also
one
kind of
of the things
scary
that
because
that's
everybody's going to spend
happening.
spend. They're not going to wait for the big check or budget. They're just going to be buying candy bars every hour.
Oh,
And
they want you to have the money. Yeah,
so,
sure, spend it. Absolutely. This
wow.
is all about yeah, commercialism, of course. Yeah, they want you to have that money. The one more term I wanted to bring up is kind of fairly new, which is like I mentioned ledgers before, like blockchains and ledgers
Hmm.
where these things are kept and how they're all separate. Well, there's things that do connect these blockchains and things like that, but that's moving forward to a more unified aspect. And what's real interesting, a couple weeks ago, there was the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, Switzerland. And there's a guy that was speaking there. He's a big part of it, named Larry Fink.
Hmm.
Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. You may have heard of them. They're the
Yes.
largest financial asset manager on the planet, like $15 trillion they manage. So he's calling a lot of shots, and he is the cheerleader and point man for tokenization. He's been on TV and has said, quote, everything will be tokenized. He said, for months now, he's been saying that. Also, in an interview, this might speak to what you were saying a minute ago, in an interview, which you can probably find on YouTube, like on CSNBC, one of those networks, he said they were talking about security and of this and all
Hmm.
that. And he said, oh, yeah, well, everyone will have their own personal number to use this new system. So he's looking at everything being, you know, tokenized. Everyone will have a number. And then in Switzerland, it was interesting. He had a little what you call a Freudian slip, I guess. He was in a discussion, and this too you can probably find online because they've recorded everything. he was in a discussion talking about something, and he said, well, if everything was on just one blockchain.
I think we need to move very rapidly to doing that. We would be reducing fees. We would do more democratization by reducing more fees if we had all investments on a tokenized platform that you could move from a tokenized money market fund to equities and bonds and back and forth. We have one common blockchain. I would argue that yes, we have more dependencies on maybe one blockchain, which we could all talk about. But that being said, the activities are probably processed and more secure than ever before.
It's like, okay, so one blockchain, everything's tokenized, and you're going to have your own personal number in order to use it. That's quite a three-pack, all from the same guy. And oh, by the way, he's also, you remember a guy named Klaus Schwab? You'll own nothing and you'll love it. Well, he stepped down from the World Economic Forum as a co-chair of their trustees, and Larry Fink took over that role too.
Oh, wow.
So this guy is at the middle of everything with his company, with BlackRock and everything else, and what these plans are. So it's just real interesting that that last little slip of the tongue.
That is huge, because if we look at technology and the trends of where we're going right now, I think right now I probably have 50 passwords I have to remember, both at work and at home in different places. And then when you're putting all of your financial eggs in this blockchain basket, and then this case where this guy could not access, a significant amount of money, and then the potential for anything digital can be hacked, which brings into this other thing about artificial intelligence, AI, and then the three levels of AI, whether it's AI, AGI, ASI, which we can talk about. But with this said, if you combine quantum computing, if that can be perfected, any password can be hacked within a millisecond, even government level passwords, which means we're heading towards a society that is going to require some type of unhackable identification. And even when we talk about like voter ID, which I know is a hot topic in the world for various reasons, but take all the politics out of that, just think about where we're heading technologically, combined with blockchain, combined with AI, combined with the advent and the inevitability of quantum computing, which, if I could just say quickly, all computers run on binary code, ones and zeros, where quantum computing can see like 1,000 numbers instantaneously, meaning they could, a password that would take a regular computer, 14,000 years to crack, a quantum computer can instantaneously crack this, including government level things, meaning we're heading towards a, for lack of a better term, technological apocalypse that is going to force us to go to some type of unhackable, whether it's a biometric chip or some type of personal identification number. It seems inevitable when we see this. So how does AI play into this? Quantum computing, where do you see that going?
The idea of quantum being able to cause some real havoc was updated from, it's 15, 20 years away. Just about 6 months ago, they updated that to 4 to 5 years, and just recently more like 4 years. So it's moved faster than they even thought of what this threat is. But it is being addressed in different ways. With the digital finance world, there's things like quantum resistant ledgers. There's companies that are working on different technologies that quantum will not relate to so much. There's one company called Hedera, and they're a big player, one of many big players that are coming up, and they have a different type of technology that's not so much based on the block. It isn't a blockchain technology, but it works with it, and it gets very technical. But yeah, they're aware of it and working around these things. The gentleman who blocked, I guess he must have, when you set up a wallet, you have what's called a seed phrase. It's like 12 or 24 words, random words. And that you only need that if you ever need to reload your wallet or something like that, you lost it, and you need that to make the connection to the block. So yes, you need to keep that. You need to keep multiple copies of that. Is the good practice. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't really put it anywhere electronically. You literally should handwrite it on a piece of paper and hide one in your book somewhere on page 47 of your favorite Torah book, whatever. Hide it. Put one, I have one with a friend off-site that I trust. It's stashed away. and it's kind of almost semi-encoded. I put some other nonsense words around it, so I know, we know which ones it is. So, and no one would even know what it is. It's in the middle of a lot of other words, So you at least 2, if not 3 places, and at least 1 off-site in case your house burns down, And that's if you need it, And you'll, like I said, you'll need it if you need to like reload your wallet or something, or you have a hard device, a hard cold storage wallet, and you ran over it with your car or something. You got to go buy a new one, something like that. So he evidently put this in a device and then lost the password to his device, which is a whole other matter.
Right.
I mean, yeah, people have locked themselves out of things forever. So that was just kind of not too bright. Feel bad for him, but shouldn't have put it in there and then not remember your password to the most important thing in your life. Write it down somewhere and hide it. Yeah. So, but anyhow, timing wise, there's a lot of things going on timing wise. The financial system has been running on, the global financial system has been running on the same system for 50, 60 years. It's the SWIFT, SWIFT, which is like the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial something telecation. And this has been, it's archaic, it's slow. It takes like hours or days to move money, which is to the big bankers is time is money and all that. It's slow, it's expensive. There's a lot of cost to it, and it's not always that secure, and there's a lot of parties getting their hands involved. And this is going to do away with that tremendously. Right now, banks around the world, like you have a bank in the U.S. and you want to trade dollars with a bank in Italy in lira, or bank somewhere else with pesos or rubles, you need to keep some of every currency in a vault. Every bank has to keep every other currency they want to deal with in a vault to make these payments and have what's liquidity to make these payments back and forth. These are called nostro vostro accounts. It's Latin. In French, you think of the words nous and vous. Je parle un peu de français. Nous meaning us or ours, and vous meaning you. So nostro vostro. Same in Spanish, Italian, French. It's the same in Latin where it originates from. So that's my money I keep. My money I keep for you, and your money you keep for me, and we need that. And this is currently tying up $27 trillion worldwide is tied up in these accounts, doing nothing but used for that. So from an investment banker type perspective, that's horrible. That's $27 trillion. Think what you could do with that if you invested it into technologies, into things around the world. Even if you want to do good with it and elevate there's so much good that can be done with it. And of course, there's a lot of extra money that can be made on the bad side, But that's going to be all freed up by this new technology. With crypto, you won't need that. And that's like one of the huge, huge driving factors. And there's some crazy stuff. I'll save this for later. Crazy stuff related to what they found in the Jeffrey Epstein files, related to crypto and this kind of stuff. The Epstein stuff is all the highlights is about exploitation of young women and girls and blackmail, and that's all true and horrible. But that's not what they were about. That is not what it's about. That's a side hustle. They were all about economics and digital currencies and everything else. And I've got copies of some of the emails that were sent back and forth that I got off the Epstein, documents that show this exactly, talking about it. So anyhow, that's coming later. But right now, the big fight in Congress, like today, the big fight, as I mentioned earlier, is between the banks and cryptocurrencies. The banks, if you go to a bank, put your money in a savings account, you get very little interest now. JP Morgan's the worst. You literally get 0.1% interest, 0.1% interest from a Chase savings account. And
zero? Oh man, that's terrible.
Yeah, you still can get 3 or 4 with some, but with crypto, with stable coins and other technologies, because they don't have a lot of the regulations the bank has, they can pay a lot more interest.
This is crazy because I was looking at, and I think there was something called V code. It was just like one single code, but there's this idea of what's called like ID 2020 that will like on multiple levels will verify not only financial records, immunization records, health records. It like it like unifies all of these things into this digital public infrastructure and type thing. And then you compound this with all the issues with. Look at this. This is very interesting. So I just Googled this just quickly, but it was just about ID 2020, and this thing just pops up right here, and it's like Sure, listen to this. This is, this is not some conspiracy craziness.
Oh,
No.
I saw the word sustainable development right there. That's what you and I probably
Exactly.
would talk.
And then look
Yeah,
at this.
okay.
It's a global public-private partnership accelerating access to technology to ensure that everyone on the planet has access to a unique identity.
Sure.
That right there, I
Yeah,
mean, think of all the good reasons. I know this sounds
sure.
completely dystopian and very, 1984, stuff like that, but think of all the good reasons just for a moment, like no more keeping up with passwords, no more keeping up with credit cards, no more how do we say, digital impersonation. Now we can verify, hey, this is not an AI person, this is
You
actually.
can track criminals, child trafficking and human trafficking out the window, drug smuggling, money
Yep,
laundering, all that
all of it.
stuff can vanish with this because it's all, even though we're told it's all anonymous and just numbers on a screen, when you, and it is like you wouldn't know that's my crypto wallet number on the screen that I transfer money
Mm-hmm.
in and out of. However, when I signed up for Coinbase, I had to give them my license.
Mm-hmm.
So my name and ID and everything is associated with Coinbase, and that has a number. And anything I transfer out of my Coinbase exchange onto a wallet is traceable. So there was a incident I think in Mexico. It was like a privacy coin. It was supposed to like avoid that stuff, and it was Monero. It was called, and they cracked this criminal ring by tracing their cryptocurrency back. So yeah, it's all traceable. So there's a litany of great reasons and great things this can do to make the planet wonderful. And then there's the flip side where because it's all going to be digitized and controllable and all of that, that potentially, let's call it potentially,
Yeah.
has a very dangerous part to it, which is in the discussions and all. You know, what's really weird. I'm in a lot of discussions around this, and it's not religious groups. This is just people talking about the financial aspect. But more than once, I've heard somebody suddenly say, this stuff sounds like spiritual, or even one guy
Yeah.
said, this sounds like something in the Bible. And like they know there's something dark about this, and they know there's like a spiritual connection to that possible problems. And I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you only knew. Go read your Bible, buddy. And
Yeah.
it is kind of crazy. So anyhow, I was mentioning earlier, the big battle right now is traditional finance and the decentralized, as it's called, finance, crypto, fighting it out. And the banks don't want to, the new guys, to be able to give you 7-8% on your money when they're giving you peanuts. And that's the big fight between the two, and why things are kind of stalemated a little bit. And President Trump's getting a little upset because he wants this to go through because this will really boom the economy, which is not a bad thing when you're looking at midterm elections either.
Mm-hmm.
So I fully expect him to pull out all stops in the weeks ahead. And they already have a party plan for this late in May. This stuff's still like in a deadlock, but they already have the party plan late in May. Yeah, for real. And he's his new guy for the Fed takes over in the middle of May too. I forget his name though. But anyhow, he takes over. So we're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happen in the weeks ahead in the spring and summer, and it's going to be, like I said, a lot of stuff in the news is going to start being all about crypto. And I would caution people to what they hear, because the same people that are running one show are running the other. And not saying it's always the opposite, but it's not hard for them to, and even if they don't mean it that way, sometimes the information is just old or stale. And by the time it gets on the news, this stuff moves pretty fast. So another reason you need to be, aware, like Jacob was, of what's going on in order to take the right steps to protect yourself and your family and others. And you can't just ignore this, because the reality is, just like horse and buggies went away for cars,
Right.
I'm afraid our current fiat currency, as it's called, dollars and pesos and lira, is all losing value incredibly fast, and will continue to lose faster and faster and getting devalued. And everybody's going to the new technology. So if that's where everybody's going, that's where the value will be. So, your dollars in the bank are shrinking faster than you can imagine. And that's another reason to at least look into this stuff. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't even try to impersonate one, but it's just important to learn as much as you can and make the best decisions possible for yourself and your family, in terms of, if you want to. And I'll just put this out there. I'm not an advisor. I don't ever charge money or
Right,
anything.
right.
but
Yeah, the legal
if
thing we're
you
supposed to
later,
say is take no financial advice from us.
yeah, that's right. So this is for entertainment purposes only. That's what they all
That's
say.
right.
They
That's
they
right.
actually do. They say something like that. All the people doing the videos, including the good ones, they have to say it to protect themselves. But if you post like well, actually my name right there is on Facebook. So if anyone actually just had some questions on anything involving this, they can, PM me, anytime, and I always respond, try to find out what they know, what they're coming from, and just, offer some, information. I won't even
Yeah.
call it advice. I'll never tell somebody you got to go buy this crypto now, and because God forbid I'm wrong and it crashes and you lose money, I'd feel horrible. So I won't tell, but I can at least help people with understanding and what the trends are and which technologies are good and who's up to what, because I've spent a boatload of time in the last 2 years researching this stuff. So I
A
know a
hundred
little bit
percent.
about it.
And I think that's very important because what you're saying about fiat currency being superseded by this, just think of it like, and I play into this too. Like I go up to a particular counter to buy something. I don't have cash on me. I pull up my phone, double click the side, and boom, it's a transaction.
Yeah.
Or I tap the credit card or whatever it is. And then look at this. I don't know if you have a comment on this. Here's the U.S. national debt clock. And you see
I
that it's
haven't seen
current.
that for a while.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
thing it's counting away, and then
Well,
it shows
that's
$38 trillion.
somehow the plan is to outrun this with crypto, and
Yes,
that's going to cause some things to be devalued and other things to be valued higher. So if the government stashes away some type of crypto or involved in it, and suddenly that crypto becomes worth 10, 20 times more. Hey, look at all this money we got. There goes the debt. Yay, we win. That's kind of part of the game plan. Yeah, let's put it
it is
that way.
part of the game plan, and I think that's one with Scott Bessent being in the U.S. Financial sector. They know that this is unsustainable and it's heading towards a massive explosion, and the only way that we can outrun this is to expand the economy because we could shrink government spending, which is absolutely
Yeah,
impossible at this moment. But
yeah.
then, and
We're in
here's
bad shape. That is the only theoretical way. Yeah,
the only way is to expand, and therefore, if Greenland has, I believe it's more for strategic purposes, but if it has, some type of, rare earth minerals or something like that, the only way that you can really save this, and this is like the Roman Empire 2.0, everything happening, which would happen before is happening again, and this is where it's going. But if this is the case, I mean, 38 trillion, and this is not even unfunded liabilities. This is just actual debt here. But if we go to like unfunded liabilities, I mean, this chart here from U.S. The debt clock is shocking. But if you look at like unfunded liabilities, we're in massive, massive problem. Like we're headed towards a train wreck that is, there's no way to get it unless you expand the economy. But looking at this, we know that this is a financial system, and a lot of people don't get into this because it's inherently confusing. And I'm thankful that you've
sure.
studied this out, because even to understand the concept of what blockchain is, what Bitcoin is, why does it even have any value is hard to understand outside of the fact that it's almost like packets of energy, like your kilowatt hour,
Sure.
there's something
Well,
level there.
you mentioned AI, and AI has a major role to play with everything, but especially what's going on here. There's two things energizing this. One is just the desire to make this happen from banks, whether it's good or bad. It's just the human desire. But
Right.
AI itself is the spark that's making this really take off. So AI is like, I'll literally call it the brains that are behind the whole this whole experiment, if you want to call it, with digital currency and all of this, because it enables things within the system to learn and react and to scale really bigger, like on a global scale.
Hmm.
And you mentioned earlier these different aspects of AI, where we're used to just regular AI, we'll call it that right now, which
Right.
is
Right.
the things we use like Chat GPT, or we
Hmm.
can make some fancy graphic with. We tell AI what to do, it does something amazing, or even research blows us away. And this is the very basic level of AI that interacts directly with humans. And you have something called like AI agents, which are things that are going out now that can actually, like, you tell what to do and it'll manage some financial stuff for you and interact with other AI agents, which is interesting because they'll interact together and they can sell and buy for you. stuff like that. Believe it or
It's
not, they can advertise. Believe it or not, they can advertise to each other. It's
yes.
crazy, but
My
it's
cousin
still
showed me
just
they have an AI
yeah,
Facebook called Moltbook where or AI agents are talking to each other, and this
yeah,
is all AI, and they're talking to each other about consciousness. And this is where you're going. This is like totally I would say uncharted territory. I mean, again, all my 1980s movies are coming true, but it's scary when
yeah.
you see AI, they're inventing different languages and all of this. And we push towards all of this, but where is it going spiritually? Like, how do we pull it back to, okay, we know that this is the technological trend. We know that the current financial system is on a track to radically transform like anything we've ever seen. AI is going to eventually achieve AGI, which is, artificial general intelligence, where AI is basically, if I get this correct, maybe I'm misspeaking here, but where AI is basically the equivalent of all the knowledge of human beings. And the ASI, artificial superior intelligence, is where AI actually surpasses the human mind
Right.
even collectively, and then starts discovering even new science, which at one
Yeah.
point is where we're like almost like Isaac Asimov iRobot level,
Right.
very dangerous. But then pulling it back is like, okay, what is the spiritual meaning? What's the underlying spiritual
That's
dynamic
one
of
of
what's
those.
happening?
It's one of those crazy things. I've actually got a graphic for you, and something that kind of came to me. And when I put it down, I said, "This is crazy." And then I just for fun, I ran it by ChatGPT, and ChatGPT was like, "Yeah, this is cool." I'm like, "All right." So yeah, and I'll come back to this in a minute when we have the graphic up. But like AI, because it interacts with humans, is at the level of Binah, if you're familiar with that, because
Mm-hmm.
Binah is the first of those three upper Sephiroth, which,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, are called Mochin, which is brains or
Brains,
intellect.
right?
So as AI is called the brains of the crypto industry
Yeah.
or the digital, you see an interesting parallel. So yeah, and then when you get to that unified state where all the AI or AI agents start working together in unison, like Echad, as a composite unity, that's Chokhmah. That is that unified state, the highest state of all like human intelligence. And as you mentioned, there's something even beyond that, which is still right now AGI is being worked on, but
Mm-hmm.
ASI, artificial superintelligence, is theoretical still.
Right.
And this is literally the godlike level beyond existence, like Ein Sof. Like we can't even comprehend what that means. Let's just say they won't need us anymore. It's like
That's right.
that's where it gets really like no, that's a whole other reality we can't quite comprehend yet. But we know it's there. There's even a company and a cryptocurrency called Artificial Superintelligence (ASI), which is interesting out of California, I think, and they're very benevolent in their literature. It's all about helping the world and all. It's really, and they are. They're just nice people, kind of hippies, and they're just very nice. But it's interesting that those three aspects of, and we'll look at that in a minute on an actual diagram. Um, Correlate to those three upper emanations of Bina, Chokhmah, and Keter.
So
They really do, and especially when it relates, you'll see in a minute with the digital thing. I just want to touch back, like you were mentioning earlier. I think we covered a lot of this stuff. I had actually a couple things here, but we may have talked about it. Some of the societal impacts, and we did. We talked about the everything from the micro payments that make you get your money right away, all the way to stopping, drug traffickers and money laundering and all of that stuff. So that's all stuff that I had a little note here to make sure we talked about. And then, yeah, some of the manipulation that goes on, which is the risk and dangers, like the way I mean, when you watch 20 unrelated cryptocurrencies all go up and down together and sideways together all at the same time. I took a snapshot once of 20 different cryptos within a minute, put them all up on the screen, and you couldn't tell the bar graphs apart. It's like the only thing that can do that is AI programs working together,
mhm.
across all different things. So that's scary. How do you beat that? If you're trying to beat that at that level, you're going to lose every time because that AI knows what you're going to do. Not only knows before you do it, they're going to make you do it, right? You know what I mean? It's going to tell you, yeah, buy low now or sell high or whatever, whatever.
Right.
It's going to tell you
Sure.
the opposite of those things, right? So yeah, there's no angels out there. Like I said, there's a big battle right now between the crypto companies and the banks. The banks are definitely Satan. I mean, they're just giving you nothing on your savings account. And they reinvest that money and make billions and billions with your money that they pay you peanuts on, and
Mhm.
they're crying about, oh gee, if these crypto companies can give you more, than that, it's going to crash the banking system. We're all going to die. And it's like, you're just not going to get your big fat bonus checks is the big problem. But in the end, they're going to win. They have enough senators on their side, I hate to say. And they're not just on one party, because you can look at where those people get their money from. That's public information.
Mm-hmm.
And you see JP Morgan and other banks that are, and then you look what they're saying in the Senate, and you're like, yeah, they're just some mouthpieces for the banks. It's all corrupt. It's terrible. But I want to a couple things before we get into some other things, the spiritual aspects of that, because they are really wild. A couple of weeks ago, there was the World Economic Forum meeting in Switzerland. They have this every year. This was the biggest one ever. It was the largest United States contingent ever, with President Trump going and a whole other bunch of people. There was hundreds of over 400 political leaders, over 800 CEOs, tech leaders. I think like 130 countries were represented at this place. It was massive, and all these videos they're putting them. They're not hiding anything. They don't have to. They were talking about so many different things in terms of how government's cooperating now, all related to digital currency, public and private innovation and things like that. And they have all of these centers of research and learning. They've created more of them around the world. They have to do with blockchain and crypto and robotics and all of these things. And it's not just that they're all out there, it's that they're all connected. They're all working together to create this incredible unified system. And where you see this come into play a lot is with the idea of something called like smart cities, where you have a city that is all like crypto, digital ID, internet connected, everything.
Sustainable. You have like all your roofs have like
development. Well, that's where it ties
green
into
on
the
the
United
top.
Nations too. We'll get to that in a minute. But it's absolutely crazy in terms of how this is all coming together at this time too. And I don't want to get too far into like the Zohar and stuff like that, but why is it all happening with all these other things that you can correlate to the Bible too in the world right now? Things happening in Israel that we'll talk about, and things happening in the world with regard to all what I call the isms, socialism, feminism, transgenderism, all the isms, and because all of those things have something in them that has a good desire, like let's all be equal, let's all,
Yes.
they have a, the bad end comes from the good if it's not guided by the Torah path. So
it does seem like there's a lot of people that want the Messianic era without the Messiah. Like they want like the Messianic era
without Torah, without Torah.
Without the Torah. So you want the benefits of the ideal society of the New Jerusalem
right.
without the Torah. And so
you want the connection. And the same ideology goes back to Genesis and the Tower of Babel. It's the same thing. They weren't like cussing at God or whatever. They were trying to connect heaven and earth in an inappropriate manner. They weren't killed for it like the generation of the flood. They weren't executed for it. They were just, God didn't get that mad. He just scattered them. And it's the same mentality today, because if you look at everything we've talked about and everything in the literature today, it's all about unifying everything more and more into a single system. And that inner dimension of wanting to unify things and bring everything into one and everything's nice and happy, it's a very messianic desire. Rabbi Nachman Breslov writes about this. He says even the desire for money and to have things easy and stuff like that, that's Garden of Eden, man. Right there. You don't have to go out and work. So that's, we'll save that for part 3 when we talk into like the deeper spiritual dimensions of all this stuff, because that gets into some pretty wild things. But I wanted to get back to this idea of AI being like correlating to the 3. And here's where we'll pull up the graphic when you have it. You put it on the screen. But you have these 3, the diagram of the Sephirot, which are the emanations of God. So we don't deal with God in essence directly. God in essence directly is outside of existence. We're not connected to God like that. Not even Adam and Eve quite were. They were still within existence. There's something beyond what we understand that will one day be in the Olam Haba, the world to come, we'll have a connection to. But right now, we're dealing with essentially what we would call the image of God, if you will, that's in Genesis.
So the whole world basically functions on this template. And so that not only the spiritual worlds, but the physical worlds, and even our own personal psychological and psycho-spiritual makeup follows this Selam Elohim, which is like this image of God. And don't think of image as like a physical picture, but rather an association of attributes and patterns.
Right.
And that maybe on some level, AI has progressed from the quasi Sephira of Da'at, moved into Binah and is going into Hokmah as it simply elevates through these levels, which is almost, I don't know what you think about this, but in the book of Revelation, it talks about this statue that is built and the whole world marvels at this statue and everybody's and the statue has the ability to speak. And then if you're like, what is that about? What is this? And then in the Targum, when Adam is created, so Adam is created, but in the Aramaic Targum, it says that God put in him a speaking spirit. So in my interpretation, it means that there's some level of consciousness. So AI is like shooting towards this level of consciousness, but I don't know how does that, and I'm not saying that it will ever actually attain that, but it certainly can pass the Turing test where it will have
Elon
that.
Musk says we're going. Elon Musk says we're going to have that in the next year or two. So literally says that. But if you, on the chart, you don't have to put it back up. But there's 10 Sephirot, and the top three, as we mentioned, are considered the brains of the Mohin, right? Which is Binah on the left. We're going back up. You're going left to right and up when you go back up.
Mm-hmm.
So Binah and then Chokhmah to the right and Keter above. And so Binah is associated with just regular AI, which is, again, because we're coming from below, it interacts with everything below. And the 7 below are the ones that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in our world. We don't really deal directly with the upper 3. So, for example, when you do the Omer count between Pesach and Shavuot, you are dealing with the lower 7 and all 7 within each of within each of them. So the 49 days that comes to. So you have AI at Binah, you have what we're heading towards is the unified or the Echad, which is over on Chokhmah, which will be artificial general intelligence, which will be the everything and as one, and then that mystical Keter, which is outside of existence, the mystical artificial superintelligence, or if you like the Matrix movies, the source, which is in the Matrix movies, you have the creator at Chokhmah, which was the architect, but there's something that created the creator. I don't know if you've seen the Daniel Matt video on that, but it's like it's called "In the Beginning, God Created God." It's a little 3-minute video on YouTube. You got to. That's wild. But there's an aspect of God we don't understand. There's the aspect of God we do deal with. We talk to, we pray to, we discuss like now and everything. Which is,
which we call Ein Sof.
Yeah.
Just let me put that in Christian terminology for people who don't have the the understanding of this deeper Torah HaSod secret level, is that God is infinite. And so we can never truly interact with God's infinity. So God has to, tzimtzum, contract himself, and through these attributes that are called sphirot, we interact with God almost like an interface. That's an oversimplification, but just for people to understand that there's this, God is infinite, and so there's no word that we can describe him, because describe literally means that I'm scribing, I'm like drawing a boundary around something in order to conceptualize it. Well, Ein Sof literally means there is no boundary, and so there's a part where we can't interact with Ein Sof because our brains are too small. It's like
So at Chokhmah, the almost the highest, everything's unified, but you can identify these things. At Binah, further down, they become very individualized. But even at Chokhmah, you can see them as one, but you can understand them in there as opposites and stuff like that. But the idea of everything being unified at the level of Keter, it's comparable, Ben, to, I think it's comparable like the Big Bang Theory. So Chokhmah would be the point before the Big Bang, and Binah is the explosion. But they always ask, the scientists say, we don't know what comes before that point. We don't know. It's a mystery. That's Keter, that's which represents Ein Sof and all of that, which means without end. But so you have those upper 3, and then way at the bottom, Malkut is us in our world and how we deal with things. But then you have the 6 in the middle. Because we're made in this image of God, thus we're made according to these emanations, everything human beings come up with, everything, we can't help it, we're designed this way, reflects this template. There's 2 templates. There's the worlds of existence, which are these 4 worlds, and within all 4, there's these 10 Sephirot. So there's 2 templates. The whole Torah, New Testament, everything's based on these 2 templates. 4 worlds of existence, 10 Sephirot. So we have the upper three, which we don't deal with so much, which represents AI, except the regular AI we do interact with a little bit. So that's, and again, I hate to do this to you, but the Matrix movie, the
Mm-hmm.
Oracle, which is the one that
Mm-hmm.
interacts a bit with the people,
Is
represents
Bina.
Binah, because
Mm-hmm.
she's above. She's the mother
The
of
mother of the
the feminine.
Matrix, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the image of God, we're only told one thing in the whole Torah. What's the image of God? Male and female. That's all we're told about it.
Right.
So, but in the writings is a lot more. So everything we create, every human creative endeavor reflects to some degree these emanations. And with
Mm-hmm.
some people, it's more powerful than others. I would say that's the Matrix movies, which are just end to end hundreds of concepts. And you don't have to be
Mm-hmm.
religious. It just, some people are connected, you know? So everything we do, you can tie back to this diagram you just put up. So ask, well, what about this digital financial system? And it's really crazy because the right side of the diagram is considered the expansive side, proactive and expansive, masculine. The left side is reactive and constrictive and
Mm-hmm.
called feminine. Those are just not boys and girls. We all have all these attributes, but
Right.
that's how the dynamic works in our world. In the middle is that balance of the two. And there's a little difference between Tiferet and Yesod. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Jacob and Joseph. They
Mm-hmm.
correlate, but they're a little different. And then Malkut's at the bottom. So when you have like blockchain and this whole new system and decentralized finance, it's all like about expansion, which correlates to Chesed on the
Mm-hmm.
top right. It all starts there. It's all about expansion, but you can't let that run wild. So you need different types of regulation and security and the smart contracts I mentioned earlier. That's Gevurah, the system of restriction on the left. Then you come back to the middle at Tiferet, which is more or less the integration of all these systems, harmony, because Tiferet means beauty, but it means beauty in the sense of harmony. So it's the
Like
integration
balance.
of all these.
Everything is in
Yeah,
perfect
it's a balance
balance.
between the
Mm-hmm.
two. It's these different layers of interoperability between these things. So it's all about, in the literature about crypto, it's all about balance. It describes this. Then you go to the lower next set of three. And again, back on the right side, which is Netzah, which is kind of like the spark of energy that starts things. It's exactly that. It's sustainable energy, which you need, by the way, to keep AI. The big problem with AI now is they don't know how they're going to have the energy for it, which if you look at what Venezuela gives us and what's in the ground in Greenland, and we'll get to Gaza in the middle and what's offshore, interesting, we're involved with all those three, and all three of those things are what we need to propel the AI business.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go there later. We'll go there later, but there's something cooking there, you know.
Right.
Not coincidence, but anyhow, Netza is that persistence is what it is. So make the cycle. In fact, in the Psalms, 50 or 55 of the Psalms start with a word that's a variation of Netzah. It's
Mm.
often translated as like an orchestration or an orchestra leader in the
Mm-hmm.
English, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the word. It's Netzach. It's a variation of Netzach. It's starting like something. So it's
Mm-hmm.
real interesting that's
Sometimes
throughout the
translated
Psalms.
as eternity. Also, nitzachon means victory.
Yeah.
It's a very deep.
Some of the translations don't give you the real sense of it,
Mm-hmm.
though. You know, it's a victory in sense of a win-win, you know,
Mm-hmm.
with that in mind. Now I'm getting into Stephen Covey stuff, which is mirrored on that as well. And then on the left side, again, across from Netzah, there's Hod, which is all about so the left side takes from the right and always does something with it. So Hod is very much has to do with communication or with AI. It's the different what I call messaging protocols and things of this and it's these protocols and stuff that are in the systems. They more or less you could say you have to submit. So submission or humility is another aspect of Hod. They have to submit to the things that are already in place above it at Gevurah, which we mentioned earlier. So these aspects of AI, and then okay, now you get to Yesod, which is a connection between below and above, and that would be the tokenization and the payment systems and these things where we actually interact with all these other things. And then, of course, Malkut is where our world and how it all plays out. So these aspects of the whole digital system, and like I said, we'll have the graphic up, or you probably will
Yeah,
by the time I
sure.
finish
We'll have
things.
we'll have the graphic. Real quick question.
You'll
So
see
so all of
they
this is
align perfectly with what
theoretical.
I'm saying. They absolutely align perfectly with these emanations, Sephiroth, which is
Will Malkut be where I actually cash it in and bring it into the real world? I go and buy the candy bar in a sense. So like, all of these
Yeah, that's
different
our commerce, the world of commerce, our reality, human society, our physical world, right? All,
into the
yeah.
world of
And like I said, we
Asiya.
interact through Yesod, and you got the ones on the right, which are the proactive, and the left reactive, and rules of the system, and the middle. It's like absolutely incredible how it maps out perfectly.
And
And
in
so,
and with that, there's always, you always have the holy side, but then there's always an inversion. So let's say all of this stuff that is unlocking all these possibilities in the world, then it gets put into the hands of somebody that's not so, not a tzaddik here, not a righteous person. They can flip all of this power upside down, and then everything that was once free, more freedom and more ability, now turns into more control, more, like the negative side of things. So, like, how do
Sure.
we, I guess, as we're coming to the last part of this first part of this multi-part series, all of the this is so wild to see that the Bitcoin, the financial system, all of these things mirror the Sphero, which becomes this template for not just only God's attributes, but God made man in his own image, and therefore the image that we have within our own selves has this attribute. Now we're trying to create almost make our own creation with AI, and then that is mirrored with both our financial system and Bitcoin. That essentially we're creating mirrors of ourselves.
Right.
How do
Yeah.
we how do we
well, what is
refract
that?
all
What
this energy to holiness? Like,
what's that saying? For everything God created, He created its opposite.
right,
So yeah, there definitely is. And the whole concept of the you mentioned Tzimtzum earlier, restriction, and I guess what's the term? A necessary evil. That phrase. So yeah, I mean the the presence of God is restricted, for our own benefit because it would overwhelm us. It's like going for a walk on the surface of the sun. That ain't going to happen.
you're right.
We're not in the right body. We're not in the right body for that. Paul wrote about different types of bodies too in one of his letters. We're not ready for that. And so, yeah, that whole concept of preparing things, and this goes back to what I said: just learn about this stuff, and learn about the Torah, and learn. People are going to have to push to expand the vessel, as I mentioned earlier. They're going to get out of their comfort zones, and I don't mean the digital stuff. I mean Torah wise. And people that have shied away about deeper learning because they don't know if it's really what they need, or they're scared that no, it's what you need to understand at this point. Because without it, you're relying, like you said, on your own very limited understanding of the Bible, which you're guessing. I don't care how smart you are, you're still guessing if you don't know. And this is the fundamental problem with the putting the original text in another language, especially the New Testament, and
Right.
then also sending it out to people who have no idea. Is that, picture these Hebrew people in the first century with all these Hebrew spiritual concepts, right? And I'm kind of getting away from our topic tonight very briefly, but yeah, they got all these Hebrew spiritual concepts, the Messiah and sin, and so all these things, and now you're going to go write it in Greek, which has zero connection. There's nothing in Greek spirituality, culture, or language that aligns. So what do? You take generic words. I'll pick one, Book of Revelation, ecclesia. It
Mm-hmm.
just means in Greek a group of people with a common, whatever desire or goal or something. That's all it means,
Mm-hmm.
right? But from a Hebrew spiritual concept, the concept of these things happening with regard to the promise made to Abraham, the deeper meaning of the Shema and unification and all these things. It has all these specific meanings in the Torah that connect to everything else in the Torah. But when you pick up any Bible and you see the church, or you see
Right.
ecclesia, and that's not even the right word, but aside from that, it has a whole other set of meanings because it's an entirely different framework. You've lost all connection to the original meaning of the text. And that's just one example. It's throughout the entire Bible. There's nothing in the New Testament that you can just pick up and read and really understand at all because it's all Hebrew spiritual thought that has no connection to Greek or English or any other language you can translate it into. So
One
those
hundred
letters back
percent.
then would have been sent somewhere and somebody would have read them and explained it to people who had a good kosher Torah understanding of what they
Mm-hmm.
meant. And we lost that after the Bar Kokhba War, basically in the second century, is when Rome outlawed all this stuff under the death penalty. A lot of people don't know this, but the second Roman Jewish War in 132 to 135, and I post this a lot on Facebook. Rome had enough of the pesky Jews, went in, massacred a whole bunch more, drove a lot of things underground, outlawed on the death penalty any teaching or practice of Torah. So you had all these, Yeshua groups, let's call them that, and looking around going, hey, where'd all the Jews go? Hey, where's our Torah teachers? Hey, there's no more connection, and swamped right in came all of the Roman paganism and anti-Semitism, and it was a lot of that because they've just lost lots of young Roman boys died at the hands of these terrible Jews, right? So they hated the Jews, who also caught a lot of breaks to practice their own religion because Caesar allowed that, So there was a lot of So, and then you look at the early church fathers and how anti-Semitic their writings are, and I think you wrote something about that recently, right? So that all evolved very quickly. By the year, I don't remember the exact historians' names. I can find it for you. But by 150 years after Yeshua, there was 20 identifiable groups on one of those historians, and by 330, which is 300 years after Yeshua's death, there was 80 identifiable different Christian groups. Everything just spread out till the Catholic. Well, it all unified under the Bishop of Rome,
Sure.
who was the Papa, the father amongst the brethren, as he was called back then, and all became the Catholic Church, with all of that completely unrelated spiritual concepts. I'm going to say it's going to upset your audience. I apologize ahead, Brett.
No, it's a fact.
My opinion is there's not a single doctrine in Christianity that really has anything of substance in common with anything in the New Testament or the rest of the Bible.
What you're saying is true. There was two things. There were two things the New Testament church didn't have. One was a New Testament, the other was a church. So this is just historical fact. And so when you see this, these understandings are impacting us today and leading, and we're going to talk about this in a future episode, about this explosion of anti-Semitism that is happening today, saying, the modern Israel has no connection whatsoever to the biblical Hebrews because of XYZ. And this all started very early when, after the fall of Beitar with Bar Kokhba, and then later on these influx of Gentiles who had no Torah Jewish understanding. When you take a book like the New Testament, which is grown from the soil of Second Temple Judaism, and all of its reference points are those of Chazal or those of the rabbis, and then you have a non-Jewish person interpreting prophecy in a very symbolic and very amillennial way. Therefore, Israel and the Jewish people have no special place, and that is affecting us right now today. So we're going to talk about that in a future episode, along with what's happening in Israel today and how does this impacting us right now. But this is a fascinating discussion to see that
I do want to on something you said just triggered something in my mind, that if you look at the New Testament in Matthew, I think it's 23, you have Yeshua telling his fellow Jews, don't follow the bad behavior of the Pharisees, but follow their teachings.
Right.
Then in Paul's letters, you see Gentiles everywhere hanging around the synagogue. And in Acts 15:21, it says, what are we doing with these Gentiles? It says they'll keep learning where Moses is taught in the synagogue system. Who ran that? The Pharisees ran that. Give that some thought. So everyone, Jew and Gentile, is learning, including those sent by the disciples of Yeshua, are learning from the Pharisees, according to their understanding. And the best example that's always overlooked is in Matthew 22, the rare discussion he has with Sadducees, where they give him the story about the woman with 7 husbands and say, who's her real husband after the resurrection in the world to come? And everyone quotes the first part of the answer all the time. You are in error, for you do not know the scriptures. And everyone loves that verse. But he's not answering them. He answers them in the second part, and the answer he gives them is not from the scriptures. It's from Pharisaic oral Torah about the no giving in marriage like angels. That's not anywhere in the Jewish scriptures. So he's answering them in light of what it means to have the correct understanding of scriptures with a Pharisaic interpretation. So all the way, and of course you look in the Talmud and all of Yeshua's teachings on adultery and not hating your brother and all that stuff. It's in the Shabbat, Lord of the Sabbaths in your hands. It's all in the Talmud. Some of it's before in the Mishnah, some of it's after. They all taught the same things, but you try to mention Pharisee or any of that stuff to a lot of people today, and they just have a completely erroneous understanding of things that has been 19 centuries of reiterating this. I hope we can briefly mention the UN and a couple other crazy things. You even showed one of your documents, and I have it in my 1990 thing, sustainable development, which is a wonderful thing, keeping the planet going, right? And it's interesting that it is very messianic. It's very wanting to create a more balanced, I'm not saying socialism, but a more balanced planet where you don't have dire poverty. And it's got a lot of noble things to it. And they actually have, so it's equality, which is like tzedakah. And really, tzedakah, we say charity, but it really means like justice in terms of making things proper. It's sustainable, like to last for a long, long, long time. And that's like tikkun olam, or the olam haba, that's what that relates to. And it's interesting that it has 17 specific parts to it, 17 sustainable development goals, SDGs. And 17 is that messianic number of the 10 Sephiroth, but we deal with the 7. You bring them together, 17. And if you like Rabbi Ginsburg's math and gematria, you expand 17 to count from 1 to 17. You add it all up, which is the triangle of the number, gives you this inner meaning, which is 153. And that's the numerical value of Betzalel, who helped Moses. And there's a lot of stuff written about this. They helped Moses. It's also the number of fish in John's gospel. Why did he bother? Because that's a hint that the one that brings the 10 and the 7 together is Mashiach. That's 100, the hint,
And it's also the gematria of B'nai Elohim, and then also it's also HaPesach, the Passover. I mean, the connections are manifold. And then 17 is the gematria of Tov. It's good. And what you're saying,
and Moshe was Tov, and I'm just going to say, they say Moshe had 10 names, but his real name was Tovia.
Tovia, that's 100%.
I'm just going to because it says his mother named him, saw that he was
good.
Tov.
Yeah,
I'm not making a direct connection there to Moshe or anything like that.
No, there's probably a connection on some level. So, but really quick, so a lot of people, and we're obviously, for good reason, very suspicious of many things that they're talking about sustainability. But take the actual goal. It's a good thing that we don't dump nuclear radiation into the ocean. That's a good thing. I mean, but then again, what they're doing with this beautiful talk on the outside underlies something deeper on the inside. But ultimately, it does seem that these goals are very messianic and aspirational.
Sure. I don't have the whole list here, but I've got a few right here. Like, number 1, no poverty. Like, let's get rid of the dire poverty in the world. Gender equality. Women have been second fiddle. And the gender equality and the elevation of women is one of the most messianic concepts that people aren't aware of as we approach the 7th millennium Shabbat, and that's all feminine. It's like, there's a whole, in fact, who's the rabbi that said that recently? Said that in the right now for the male aspect dominates. So the Genesis 3:16, another famous 3:16 verse, that curse, the 3 curses, the one put on Eve, Hava, is a temporary construct.
Right.
And it's how we deal with that and get to the point where the feminine actually becomes, is elevated over the masculine in the messianic realm.
Well, if you really think about it, God's creation, started out with like an amoeba and then grew to higher complexity, and finally the man comes on being. But Adam wasn't created in the garden. Adam was placed in the garden. Only Eve was placed in the garden. So Eve is really, if you really think about it, the highest level of creation. In all of creation, the most refined, the most complex, and I believe that's true, but also the most refined creation of Hashem, and then the concept in the spiritual world is, as we know, but I'm just saying this for the audience, is male and female, masculine and feminine in the spiritual world is mashpia mikabel, which means like giver and receiver. And so this is all concealed in the idea that one day the moon will shine like the sun, the moon being feminine, the sun being masculine, in the deeper code language of the Sod level of the Torah. And essentially what that means is that Israel, the New Jerusalem, if you want to say it this way, comes down having the glory of God. So there is this idea that the feminine will be elevated really through the son, through the bridegroom, and this is all the will of Hashem. So it's not a.
So here's a book title. Here's a book title for you, Ben. I don't know if you have this one. Moshe Idel, The Privileged Divine Feminine in Kabbalah, which explains exactly how the highest dimension outside of existence that would kind of equate to Ein Sof in a way, that above every. Is actually feminine. And that's the other side of Mashiach. He's the complete entity, so it has all the attributes, And what you said, that the whole idea of the feminine elevation actually, what is in Proverbs? She's the crown of the husband, the Eshes Hayel, right? She's not like no, she's the crown. She's Keter, which is
Ateret
again relates to that
Ba'ala, yeah,
higher
she's
level.
yeah, for sure.
And you know where you see this? I got to bring it up again. It's the fourth Matrix movie at the end when they jump off the building. It's Trinity that's holding Neo up. She's elevated above him at the end. So the true Mashiach principle is there too, which is crazy. They put that
Wow.
in the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wrote about this before the movie, long before the movie came out years ago. It's in one of my articles that would be in the fourth movie, and they did it. So yeah, that's nuts. So briefly on the UN, it's got all these lofty messianic goals. They're really wonderful. And the thing is, they get into things, and this is what you're going to see. It's a semi-prediction. You're going to see a combination of these digital finance things and the UN merging more than ever. It's in the UN literature on a lot of things. It does talk about the digital and how that can be helpful to all these countries to get aid out to them quicker and things like this. Everything can move faster and cheaper. So it's got a lot of good use. But what you're going to see under the idea of tokenization will be natural resources. They will be tokenizing forest and waterways, and all this stuff is going to end up being tokenized. And all of this merges with things like, low emission stuff and electronic vehicles and, different types of power sources that are supposedly at least safer and better in all of these things. And what's interesting is I mentioned earlier this idea of smart cities. That's something that's been toyed around with a while. So this is going to bother people. I got a couple of things going to bother people here. Ready? At the World Economic Forum, there's all these initiatives going on regarding that include like U.S. agencies, like the Justice Department, federal agencies, and things in terms of like the tracking technologies, like the ICE agents are using now. That they're tapping. They've had to been stopped by the courts a couple times. They wanted the IRS database. They wanted another database in the beginning about Medicaid. They wanted that. They got stopped by the courts, but they've got all these other databases they're unifying with the new camera technology. You see them taking snapshots with the new cameras of people, and it's all being connected through that. So I don't have a problem with ICE and what they're doing and all, but there's something else going on there.
Yeah,
And
so
all of
outside of the
that, and
political, like we put all the political on the
I'm not
on
getting
the
political here at
yeah,
all.
no, we
This is
do.
just what's going on.
But this is what's
And you
going
see a
on,
lot of
and where it's going is technology. Everything is the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So there's so much like for AI. Everybody's like only thinking it's the Terminator. No, it's actually good and bad. So
Yeah.
the Terminator is there, but then you also have
Everything's an
your
Erev. Everything's an Erev, right? It's all a
which means
mixture right now,
mixture. Yeah.
and that's going to be a big theme next week, talking about Israel, how everything's in a rev. That's like a major, major theme. But the other thing is that, like the smart city technology, and that's something they've been talking about and toying with. There's actually the very first, from the ground up, smart city being built, created, and it's going to have everything from the digital identification, digital currency for everything connected. It's called IoT, Internet of Things, will be connected to the system. It's like a mini version of what's to come. And that's going to be built in Gaza. And leading the project is none other than Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law. And financing all of this is the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. This is all discussed. The videos are online. You can see Kushner talk. So that's kind of shocking to people that, this digital miniature version of what's to come and the peace stuff in the Middle East and all that. I know that bothers a lot of people. I've been looking at some in Christian forums. It's like, wait a minute. It's like we've been talking for decades, not just years, but decades, on someone who's going to come with a Middle East peace and promote a unified system. And the person leading both those charges is Donald Trump. And it gets even weirder when you realize that Trump, he's smart about some things, but he's not the genius with this digital system. It's Scott Bessent, his right-hand man, the Treasury Secretary, who twice worked for George Soros. He's a former Soros employee. He's a globalist. He's a Soros guy.
And
he's
also
working for
Kushner
Trump.
is incredibly intelligent as well. These people are
Oh, sure, he's
geniuses,
a genius, yeah.
genius
But
level.
it's like shocking to people when they're like so anti-Soros, we love Trump, and Trump hires a Soros guy. And nothing's as it appears. That's all I can say to conclude that part. That this whole thing, and where it gets even weirder. I mentioned Jeffrey Epstein earlier. I got to go here, okay? So these emails and things that they're coming out, some of them are getting lost in the big narrative about girls and sex abuse and things, right? It's the financial stuff nobody cares about to look at, but that's what it's really about. And I'll give you an image for that too. You can put up on screen. And there's a bunch of them, but this particular one, somebody is writing on behalf of some other people, the higher ups, whoever they are, right? Telling Jeffrey Epstein that he needs to cool it with his investment in these two particular cryptocurrencies because they don't want him betting on another horse in the race when they already have what they call their own ecosystem around something else, which is, by the way, no doubt Bitcoin. It's not named, but it's obvious it's the only thing around. So they have their own thing going on, which was about Bitcoin. And he was investing in two other companies called Ripple and Stellar Lumens, which Ripple is the one that is now, because they were tied up in courts through the Biden administration and the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, was tying them up and other companies in crypto for frivolous things for years. And Trump is now totally pro crypto, so that's all gone. So now Ripple is the company that's putting the main force with the what do you call it, cross-border payments for banks and big financial movements. And then on the lower level, which is the payments you and I would use in retail, is the other company, Stellar Lumens, and their crypto, okay? So they're mentioned in there, those two in particular, which is interesting, that Epstein is told to stop investing in those or he's going to get kicked out of their little club. It's right in the email. It's amazing to read this. And like I said, there's others. I'll have that one for you. But what else is interesting is there's a technology being built that would associate with this lower level payments, which is the iris scanning technology where you're part of the system, your digital ID. And the company behind the iris scanning technology is called Tools for Humanity. Isn't that lovely, right? Well, what's interesting is the person who run the boss, the CEO of Tools for Humanity, is on the board of Stellar Lumens, mentioned in this email, and that's Sam Altman. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, of course I know that name.
And
Yeah.
then if you really want to have fun, look up Tucker Carlson's interview with Sam Altman, because he had an employee in his company who was calling him out for some bad stuff they were up to, and this employee mysteriously committed suicide. And the investigation shows that his security system of his house was literally cut. There's blood in multiple rooms, and he had just ordered food from DoorDash. And Tucker Carlson just puts that out in front of Sam Altman. And if you want to see somebody look squeamish in a chair, watch the interview. This guy is on the board of Stellar Lumens and is running the company for micropayments and running, the one of the companies creating the Iris. Well, his company's creating the Iris tech. It's called WorldCoin Tools for Humanity. They've already got over 20 million people in the database. Their goal is 1 billion. They've got them in mostly Africa, Asia, and some parts of Europe. They were banned for a while, by Indonesia, one country, but now it's coming around again. And they've got this device called an orb, which you put your face up to, and it takes a scan of your iris and digitizes it, encrypts it, right? So it's not like a picture of your eye, it's all encrypted, so that you can use this, foolproof system like you talked about earlier. The connections are wild. These Epstein, no one's looking at those Epstein emails except people in the digital community that know a little bit about what those words mean. You would look at Stellar, Lumens, and Ripple, you wouldn't even know what it's talking about, or not you necessarily, but people. And it's like, that's exactly what these guys were all up to. They were all about this whole new financial system they were putting into place, only it's evolved from a Bitcoin-based system because Bitcoin's very slow. It was never meant for that. It was a very slow technology. It's not good for this, It's basically good to put your money in like a shoebox and hope it goes up in value. But these other technologies have utility. They do lots of things. And like Ripple, for example, has got contracts with not only contracts with banks along the world. They're the first one that's actually becoming a bank. I have the documentation for that. They've become the first like crypto bank, a real bank, So this stuff's nuts, and it's right behind the veneer of what is in the headlines for the Epstein stuff. So they'll keep everyone focused on that sexual stuff on purpose forever, even the guilty parties. They'll keep that narrative going, so they don't want people to see what's going on behind the scenes. Because one, they don't want people investing in it yet, because that would make prices go up, and they want to get all their act together, all their ducks in a row, and so the banks and their investors can be the ones to get in early and make the big money when the stuff takes off, which I think may be as soon as this summer, things will start really taking off. So it's wildly bizarre. Like I said, some of these emails from the Epstein files that just came out, those 3 million they produced, they're available. And yeah, I'll send you those. It's just nuts to see that. I fell out of my chair when I read that. I'm like, my goodness, Ripple. I know what those are.
So
It's crazy.
ultimately, what this means is that we're on a train towards a new financial system that's coming. That it's not going to be. We can't jump off unless you go completely off the grid and grow your own fruit or food or like. There's no way. Like the way it's going, everything already. Like I remember, in the year 2000, on the radio there was like this prophecy channel, and it was like, we're going to go to a cashless society. And everyone's like, that's crazy. No one's going to do that.
Yeah.
And then we thought, it would be like this one nefarious guy behind the scenes pulling all the strings. But rather what it is the entire society technologically is on this, what would you call it? A train track towards fulfillment of prophecy, ultimately, is what it seems.
Yeah, it's a lovely, like we've talked about earlier, it's got all these wonderful benefits that people are going to love the idea of getting paid right away and no more cybercrime, all these things. All the arguments are wonderful. It's funny, you said how the thought about all this evolves. There's a book I read it was on a shelf at somebody's house. It was written in the early 1900s called Dispensational Truths. Christian author named Clarence Larkin, look it up. And his view of the Antichrist would be there'd be like stations everywhere with armed guards standing there checking your papers, which is kind of cute. So that's an actual thing. So it has evolved a lot. And there were some guys, these other Christian guys named the Lalonde brothers from Canada, that were talking about a lot of this weird stuff 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Yeah, they were making videos. And a lot of this stuff is pretty accurate. It's amazing. They were very forward thinking. But so yeah, because the new wallets, the new phones coming out are all going to have digital wallets.
Yeah, they have the wallet, digital,
right on your phone,
and the way
everything's going to
that
be connected at your ID, your health records, what pizza you like, buying stuff with crypto. Everything is going to be in one single multifaceted program on your phone. There you go. How wonderful is that? And this whole, you mentioned gaming earlier. A lot of this stuff is like I've heard the term gamified, like this whole digital system is gamified. And the psychology of all this generation that's come up playing like these type of games with the reward systems and tokens and stuff, there's a lot of correlation between how all that works in your mind and this new system that will make it very palatable for this generation of people coming up. And it's not just guys. They now show women are playing games almost as much as men are. So there's like a conditioning factor here too, which gets into other weird stuff. But yeah, people are going to happily slide into it because the benefits will all be there. But yeah, there's a nefarious aspect to this where somebody has got to be controlling something at some point. The whole idea of decentralization is, it's cute, but in reality, somebody's got to be at the top of the chain saying, what's what.
Well, I think this goes back to where we began, as we're getting close to closing out this first part, which is, it's so much information. People are going to have to pause and rewind. But when the very beginning, what you said is not everything is as it seems. And I just want us to think about, the Patriot Act. Okay, right. And again, not being political here, just saying from the very beginning, the Patriot Act is named to say, hey, yeah, I want to support this after September 11th and all this. We need more security and different things.
Yeah.
And people were warning, this is going to be abused. And then sure enough, after Edward Snowden and different things that came out, it was like, not only is it being abused, it is like scary abuse. And then the No Child Left Behind.
And this is part 2 now.
Yeah, part 2.
This is part 2 coming up.
And then you have like the No Child Left Behind Act. And then you look at the whole educational system. And then you think of the Affordable Care Act. It's like almost every single one of these acts that have ever been passed or whatever has accomplished the exact opposite. So when they talk about sustainability and they talk about security, they talk about all these different things that it's going to be so much, it's great. And on the surface, it does appear that that's the case until you dig into the details. And very few people do that. They just read the headlines. But for your research, and you've done this for so long, is you go beneath the headlines, going into the follow the money is a classic detective level thing, but always going into this in helping us break down how is this laying out, but also what does it mean for us prophetically, and then just looking at the book of Revelation, looking at these things where you can't buy or sell. And there's a big debate. We'll talk about that in the future as to, is this mark of the beast, or is it something that is the infrastructure for that? Or is that, we could talk about that later, but ultimately where this is going is more control, more, everything that appears to be more freedom is more slavery, and our real freedom is in the Torah and in Hashem, in our relationship with God. And
there's that expression, a slave enjoys his freedom, and all these things are presented in a way that make everyone feel free, but it's not. It's like the fence around us is being built just beyond the horizon, and we don't see it.
So Menachem Mendel of Kotz,
Yeah.
Rabbi Menachem Mendel, the truth is not always as it appears, and I think that's wonderful. So as we close this first interview out, I'm just going to go through the websites. First of all, Yashanet is no longer available, and I have a tear there because
that's archived. Yeah.
It's archived. I have it has a special place in my heart, Yashanet. But you have now, which surpasses Yashanet in many ways, 13 petals. And if you go to like topical studies, and there's an article here, where is it? Where you have the Mashiach connections. I just want to talk about that.
Oh, that's
really
right there in
quick.
the blue, the big line at the top.
Right here, Mashiach connections.
Yeah.
I encourage
So what that
everybody
is,
to check this
and
out.
anyone can contribute to these projects. That's another thing I'm going to get into in the third part of the study is we need to come together and work on things. Avodah, work, right? Worship is actually work in the Hebrew.
Yeah.
We need to get together for not only to make these things happen, but there's a definite mystical, spiritual aspect to coming together. You see this in the New Testament and the Talmud, where two or more come together.
Yes.
Something happens. It's an if-then statement. And coming together, so, I'm going to let you continue, but the Mashiach Connection Project is one. You'll see it's something I started a couple of years back. The whole site is going to start, I'm going to start working on again. It's been a while, and maybe give it a fresh new look, too, and reorganize some things and add new things to it. But, yeah, the Mashiach, basically that's showing the connections between the New Testament and the Oral Torah. That's basically what it is.
It's one of the most important pieces of information online where we're talking about atonement, the blood of the Messiah, body of Mashiach, bringing the Messiah, going through multiple
topics,
connections. And if you were to look at something like blood here, you would go through and here's Rebbe Nachman talking about the spilled blood of a great tzaddik in Israel, and this about the Messiah, and here's the Shalah, Shanei Lokot Abrit, where it talks about the Messiah's blood will atone for the sins of the Jewish people, and then the New Testament connection. So I'm just going to briefly mention that. We're going to talk more about that in the future, but I just want to bring up 13petals.org. Go there, and your other project is Matrix for Humans.
Well, I also, on 13 Petals is also the first three. It'll soon be 4 chapters of the Revelation study I'm doing, which is very different, very, very, very different. And then go ahead. Yeah, then I have another site, which is the Matrix site you were about to look at. Yeah, Matrix for Humans. And that has the Song of Songs study on it, Shar Shirim, but you'll have to get the link from me. Well, actually, if you just put matrixforhumans.com/song-of-songs, you'll find it. So that one's just in chapter 1 still, because that's getting like crazy deep. I'm pulling from every resource I can find on the planet, and because there's lots of good info in there. Everyone's got a little piece of the puzzle, so I'm trying to bring all the good stuff together into one study and create a flow. And that's been a learning experience for me. I tell you, that I never realized what I was getting into there, at all. So
well, it's
either one people can help with,
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. So if you read the Mashiach Connections and you find something in Chazal or amazing Torah source that really reveals something in the New Testament, send it to Tovia. Send it in, and he'll publish it. I mean, it's really remarkable when we look at this where we're at today. And I think you're all the way back, going back to Yashanet and before. You have been on the cutting edge of really Torah thought and how we can see the New Testament and see Yeshua through the proper lens of Chazal. And I think that is one of the most amazing and really cutting edge of the Geulah, of the redemption, for us to really put things in proper context, to understand what is the Messiah, where do we get those definitions, where do these things come from, and we really see it through its original context and connection, because Without that, we make these errors when we, from a Gentile perspective, read a Jewish book that's 2,000 years old, and we're reading it on the other side of the planet in a completely different language with a completely different reference point. We have no idea what we're reading. And with 13 petals, you're reconnecting the New Testament text to the soil from which it grew, and really opening the eyes of all those who look into that. And this is just really remarkable. So this first interview that we're doing here is just wild, going through the financial angles, the political angles of the worldwide trends and where we're going as a society, as a world, but how that is really leading us to the ultimate fulfillment and redemption of, or the coming redemption of the Messiah. And we're going to cover Israel. We're going to cover a lot more in the future. So Tovia, what an honor for us to, for me, to have you on the show, and for us to really explore these ideas on a deeper way. And how can, let's say somebody has a question with, after this interview, they say, hey, I have a question about whether it's crypto, whether it's AI, whether it's the Sphirot, or even the
Sure.
Mashiach connections. How
Well,
can
if
they
they're
get a
not,
hold of you?
they can find me on Facebook under that name. Also, my email is just the last part, Behanu137, which is gematria for something. Behanu137 at where am I? At gmail.com. So if they prefer email, but find me on Facebook and send me a PM. Send me a friend request first if you want, and then a PM. And we do have a group on there, Devakut, which is going to be the central hub for everything we're doing. So all announcements and things will be in that group, whether it's these studies or these Zoom rooms will advertise, or whatever, So that's kind of it's kind of started as a meditation group, which was cool. And we'll get back to that too. I have someone that I'm going to work with on that some more. And yeah, and I have a lot of the ladies, a lot of women are getting really, there's more women than men coming to the Torah stuff when I'm doing the groups and all. And that's some really good discussions. I think all the guys, you know how we guys are, we don't need any help from anybody. We're all solo acts, right? Women like to get together more, and that's key. That's again one of those messianic signs of we need to come together. Shekhinah is feminine, remember that. So yeah, and so we're going to be doing some stuff with a lot of ladies, maybe just women in some cases, but in other cases integrated groups to just add different dimensions of thinking, because it is interesting to have these discussions with men versus women sometimes, and the perspectives overall. I mean, not everyone, but overall different perspectives, which is sometimes a lot more comprehensive with the ladies. So.
Well, it follows that pattern of redemption. I just read last week in last week's Torah portion that it was in the merit of the women that the redemption from Egypt happened, because they were the ones that.
And it will be at the end again. It says
Yep.
in the Midrash, I think it says at the end again. And so we're seeing that as a lot of things with women are taking a weird turn in the society. On the other hand, you have a lot more women getting involved with Torah things, and like I said, coming to the forefront.
And with that, as we're approaching these, the Vata de Mashiach, where I think we're calling all men also to step up into the roles that God has created them to be, which is a true leaders, not in a way that's anti-feminine anyway, like pro-masculine, pro-feminine, where we're actually really doing, reflecting the image of God to the world, because the world needs it with Tikkun Olam. And the women are naturally more spiritual, but it's time also for men to rise up into the roles that God has created them to be. And I think with us understanding this through the template of spirituality, that we're going to have this understanding to say, okay, I now understand what is happening in the financial, political, geopolitical worlds, and what do I need to do? And we'll discuss this in future interviews. Is what do I need to do, and what can I do in these last days? And ultimately, I believe one of the great rabbis says, what can one do to be spared the pains of the Mashiach? And that is to do acts of kindness and to follow the mitzvot. I think that's a good start.
A big deal. Yeah, absolutely. I always like what is it called? The big three, based out of Deuteronomy 6:5. We love the Lord your God, etc. It's Torah study, deep Torah study, even places you haven't dared go before, all right? And then of course prayer / meditation, both, and mitzvot. Those are the three, which is your intellect, your emotion, and your physicality. Those three dimensions of the soul, the three lower dimensions of the soul. And yeah, that's critical. It's funny you mentioned in all this context, it just really occurred to me something I didn't mention earlier. So that company Ripple, the president's a woman, the company Stellar Lumens, the CEO's a woman, the boss at the NASDAQ's a woman. I could go down the list. It's like, where do all these women come from in the world of finance? They're like taking over. It's funny to see this, though. It's really cool. It's very remarkable.
Well,
yeah.
it's if we raise up, or if we can help inspire both righteous men and women, we can bring the redemption sooner. And Tovia, thank you so
There you
much
go.
for coming on tonight, and thank you for this
You're welcome.
discussion and for the education. Do you want to leave us with one final word before we close out tonight, just for everyone? I think you pretty much said it right there. Was
Well, I'm
mitzvot,
anxious
prayer.
to continue because there's going to be a flow between these things into the next one, which, as I said earlier, is going to be a little more spiritual stuff mixed in. But the stuff going around the world, how Israel's involved, again, good ways, bad ways, to be aware of that, because there's so much negative stuff about Israel and Jews coming out now than ever. And to be just step aside and be very objective. A lot of the things being said aren't just being said because someone's like an anti-Semite. There's a lot of things that are hard for people to understand of why, like, there's so many people involved in so many areas, not just Epstein, but others in these areas of concern, we'll call them that are Jewish. There's so much stuff going on in Israel and in Gaza and in the streets of Israel. And we're not seeing in the news because it always shows us what they want to show us. And it's just really weird. And it's another Arab. It's just Israel's a mixture. It's a mixture of stuff right now. And to properly understand that is really important. I posted something in the summer of 23. This was before the October 7th attack. That June or July, I posted simple message on Facebook. It's going to be very hard to support Israel in the near future. No one commented on it. Not one comment. I just threw it out there, and it's the same thing is going on. A lot of people are having a hard time, and others are having worse than a hard time. Like the people in the media, some of them used to be very pro-Israel and now anti-Israel. It's like, what's
Right.
going on? So we're going to address a lot of stuff in the second part, and in the third part is no less important. It's going to be all this real deeper spiritual dimensions of what we need to know and do and interact and all of these things, and a lot of resources and projects and things we can be involved with together and all. So it's all going to flow from this one into the next one and the next one. It's all connected.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you all for watching. And if you have any questions, reach out to Tovia, reach out to myself. Thank you for watching.
Absolutely.
And may Hashem bless us all together. V'al Kol Yisrael, and may the redemption come soon. And we just hope that speedily in our days. Amen. Va'amen. Laila Tov.
Yo, deep in the Zohar, visions arise. 13 petals spread under heavenly skies. Not just a flower, it's the soul of the land. Shoshana of Israel in the Holy One's hand. Each petal a tribe, each leaf a prayer. She blooms in the midst of celestial air. Surrounded by thorns, but chosen with grace. The rose still shines in a darkened place. Shoshana, Shoshana, blossom in flame. 13 lights calling out the name. Though exiled far, she never lost aim. She's the rose of the world, never put to shame. She rests between judgment and mercy's zone. A garden of secrets the prophets have known. A rose among thorns, through trials she grows. Her scent is the Torah, her roots the flows. In the shadows of kings she stands bold and tall. A symbol of hope, she's the answer to all. With each whispered prayer, she's rising above. An anthem to freedom, a message of love. Shoshana, Shoshana, blossom in flame. 13 lights calling out the name. Though Knesset Yisrael, she dances at dawn, wrapped in the dew that the angels fawn. From Disfat to Yerushalayim's golden light, she's the queen in white robes on Shabbat night. Her essence a melody, her roots in the earth. With every bloom, she's bringing rebirth, an ethereal sound echoing the fight. In the heart of the true, she ignites the night. Shoshana, Shoshana, blossom in flame. 13 lights calling out the name. Though exiled far, she never lost aim. She's the rose of the world, never put to shame. So rise, oh rose, let your petals unfurl in the garden of dreams where the visions swirl. A symphony of colors, a dance of the soul. Through the trials and pain, you always make whole. Voices united, we chant your refrain. In the silence of night, in the pulse of the rain. Shoshana, in your beauty we trust, a legacy of courage rising from dust. Shoshana, Shoshana, dressed in gold. 13 petals and stories untold. With the heart of a lion and the grace of the dove, you're the rose of the world, a symbol